and welcome to the island of misfit toy collectors. I'm your host, Dreadnought Ryan, and I am joined by this amazing team. I call them my Beatles. It's Adam from GoFigure, Ken from Toy Connection, Phil.
It's on Paul McCartney.
Paul McCartney. I was thinking more Ringo, and then of course,
hey, Ringo's cool. I'll be Ringo.
the man himself, Xazyl from Sgt Slaughter, Slaughterhouse.
That's me.
Look at this.
Awesome.
Look
Want
at that
to give a
logo.
big shout out to Scuba Pete, James, aka Ratface. Love the name. We have TJC, my man Articulated Chad, Anthony Whitehead, Kyle Roper, and my brother from another mother, Gaz. So
Fantastic.
welcome everyone for joining. Oh, and I can't forget Dale. Hey, Dale. And Impossible Pie, Payne's Toy Sample, the man, the myth, Hans Chow, the sexiest man in the Caribbean, Scott Hughes, Jim Largo, Jeff Morris. Okay, I'm just gonna say Dragon Balls because I don't want to mess up the name.
I'll be Pete Best. That's no problem.
Okay. Well, thank you all for joining today. This is part 2 of Streamathon 2022, and we're going to talk the best toy line ever made, in my opinion. It's G.I. Joe. So,
Fantastic.
Yo, Joe.
Yo, Joe. Real quick,
Hey,
guys,
Zay.
I just want to go just a real quick, to make you, agree with me on why this is the greatest line. No, just, how did you get started with Joe? And, what do you remember about the first Joes that you got? So let's start with Adam.
So, much like Xazyl said in the last section of our Streamathon, I don't remember a time ever there wasn't G.I. Joe. It was always on TV. It was always in the stores. Just because, again, born in '81, as soon as I was cognizant of what was going on in toy aisles, G.I. Joe was a constant up until I was out of toys. Right, like I stopped playing with toys probably when I was 12, 13. That's when Joe kind of like petered out. So there was never a moment in my childhood there was no Joes. They were just always there, to the point where new lines would come and go. And so if you were like excited about a new toy and it wasn't in the store, you could always get a Joe. It was like this like safety blanket in the toy section. Whereas but Joe is always there, and they were always awesome. So yeah, Joe was just always there. But I remember my first Joe. And you'll hear this, especially with my favorite selections. I liked the Joes that were very streamlined and looked almost like a real soldier. If there was too much going on, I wasn't super into it. But my first Joe was Spearhead, and the whole desert camo thing. He had a pet bobcat. He had a sword. He had a cool machine gun. He looked like kind of a regular everyman soldier. And so I loved that. And so he was the first guy that made me say, let's get a Joe.
Spearhead and Max is probably, first of all, it's a great combination character with a pet. But that figure actually invites you to collect more because it's got so much going for it that it's you want to look into more of him. You want if it's not just like a nameless character. This guy has a pet bobcat. Right. It invites imagination. I love that character.
Yep.
Ken.
Well, for me, when it comes to the G.I. Joe, I woke up on a Saturday morning once, or maybe it was morning before school. I can't remember anymore. Turned on the TV, had this really cool theme song, had these really cool good guys, these really cool bad guys. Then when I went to buy the figures, they had all the articulation. You could do a whole lot with them. They were the most sort of like, you could sort of make them do like, it's just that you got away from the 5 POA style. The Transformers I had as a kid, or the He-Man I had as a kid, they didn't have that level of articulation. They didn't come with as many accessories. So for that reason, I just fell in love with Joe's. And for me, like I know you say that they're the greatest toy line of all time, Ryan. I would say that they're the greatest vintage toy line of all time, greatest toy line of all time. We should save that for another stream. But
Jeez.
sorry, I had to get that in there. But excited to talk about this. And this is kind of the one toy line that the five of us kind of congregate to the most. Like, this is the one that we think talk to the most as a group, because we all have kind of that shared passion, all of kind of an equal level for G.I. Joe. And many of the people in our chat as well are G.I. Joe people first. And I totally understand why. So experience with Joe's, I mostly got into it closer to 1988. But, you know, the movie was playing all the time on TV. The early seasons were always playing. I got deep into the Tiger Force and got back into it for the 90s. So yeah, it just started and ended at the right time for me. Where we go with that.
And Phil.
Yeah, I grew up in New Zealand, and I don't think we got G.I. Joe until like 85 or 86. So we missed the first few waves of G.I. Joe. And so the figure that I'm going to be showing today is from the 86 line. That's one of the lines that I have the fondest memories of. And yeah, I wasn't really into sort of military army sort of soldiers much when I was a kid, but when G.I. Joe started bringing out the Cobra figures and the Dreadnoks as well, that's when I started to really fall in love with G.I. Joe. So yeah, we didn't have it on TV. I don't think it may be the same as Australia. We didn't have it on TV in New Zealand, so we had to hire out the videos from the video store to get our fix of G.I. Joe. So it wasn't as regular. So we had to fill in the gaps with our figures, basically.
And my good friend Xazyl. I wonder who you're going to say is your favorite.
Well, first of all, I want to start. I was waiting for the G.I. Joe stream to say this. I want to say happy birthday to Sgt Slaughter.
Oh, happy birthday.
It's his birthday. It's his birthday weekend. Imagine having a birthday on a weekend. Hell yeah. So happy birthday to my childhood hero, Sgt Slaughter, and good friend now. So probably best friend. I'll no need to check up on that. I'm almost certain he would say we're best friends now. But for me, don't fact check it. Just go with it.
I'll get out of the way for Sarge. You can have another best friend too.
That's my favorite thing anybody's ever said on YouTube. Just he would say.
I think he would say. So for me, yes, Phil, as far as I can recall, we didn't have G.I. Joe on TV. The first episode that I ever saw on VHS was Ninja Commando and Ninja Holiday. And Sarge is featured prominently in that. And I was instantly a fan of Sarge then, and by extension, G.I. Joe. And my first G.I. Joe was Leatherneck, another Marine with a mustache, because I couldn't bloody find Sarge anywhere. Unbelievable. But yeah, good stuff. I love G.I. Joe. Yeah, nobody beats G.I. Joe.
And now you know.
That's right.
Knowing's half the battle. My first that I remember were the Falcon Gliders. I got them for my birthday. And then I also got the Sky Striker. And from that point on, I was in love with this line. You'll see my most underrated figure is my jumping off point from the Joes and Cobras into another group that I think is just the best that there is. So I want to send just another call out, Toy Kind of Moods out there. And then also my very good friend, Chris Johnson. Good to see you, brother. So,
hey, buddy.
I think he's got a birthday coming up, you said too, didn't you?
Yeah, he does. It's the big one. It's the big 5-0. So be on the lookout from that on a Toy Kind of Mood. On a Misfit on the Island of Misfit Toys with special guests, Toy Kind of Mood. So
nice.
Toy
Ryan,
very quickly. My newest subscriber, so thanks to him.
Yeah.
Very quickly, I just want to say, if anyone's jumped over here from the Slaughterhouse and this is your first time here, do hit subscribe. You will not regret it. Hit subscribe, hit like, and enjoy the show.
We need to celebrate when Ryan hits 100 subscribers.
Yeah.
He doesn't like the idea of subscribers, but we like it on his behalf.
When Ryan hits 100 subscribers, we will do another. We'll have everybody back, but we'll all dress as our favorite Dreadnought.
Done.
Yes.
Yeah. I get Road Pig. And
All
he
right.
take my shirt off.
I'll just be Xandar out of spite.
That's fine.
And our disguised as Ken.
Yeah. All right. We are going to start off with, well, the birthday boy himself.
Happy birthday. No, we'll get striked.
Yeah.
Yeah, what a lad, what a dude,
So,
what a guy,
Xazyl,
what a
this
hero.
was your pick is the most underrated in your
Right.
opinion. Which, you know, let's just be honest, it's our favorite Joes. Let's just be honest.
Well, it's our favorite Joe, but is it our favorite version of Sergeant Slaughter? I would say that this is probably not a lot of people's favorite version of Sergeant Slaughter. In fact, for me, when I was a kid, this was the only version of Sarge that I ever saw in stores. Now, I picked it up on the card, I had a look at it, and I was like, oh, I really want a Sergeant Slaughter in my collection. I've been looking for ages up until this point, right? Not even seen a Triple T anywhere. But I was like, this is not the one I want. This is some sort of weird blue tank top. I don't get it. I don't understand it. So I put it back on the pegs, never to see another Sergeant Slaughter ever again. I never saw the Warthog Sarge that came out after this. So this was my best and only opportunity as a kid to own a Sergeant Slaughter. But I put him back because I didn't like the skin tone, which I've often said looks like a supermarket mannequin. It pops because it's blue, but it wasn't the Sarge for me. I wanted the cartoon version. I'm not even sure I was aware of the mail away at that point. I can't really remember. But I do know that the Triple T, we even had our own Triple T commercial dubbed in new animation for it and dubbed with the Australian voices for the Triple T. So I knew it was out there. I just didn't know how to get one. So yeah, when this guy came along, it was like, God, so close, but yet so far. And so I didn't pick it up. In fact, I didn't pick one up when I started army building Sergeant Slaughters, trying to get to 777. Hit me up if you got one for sale. The Marauders one was the one that I was like, I'm not going to even bother with these guys, right? And I'm a big Sarge fan. But I was like, I'm not even going to bother. So for a while there, I had a bunch of Warthog Sarges. I had a bunch of Triple T Sarges. I had a bunch of the mail away ones before I even got one Slaughter's Marauders Sarge. But then when I got it, I was like, yeah, I can see why this is pretty bad. But then after that moment, I actually started to find that it had a bit of charm to it, right? Yeah, the plastic's a bit weird, and that was because it was made in Brazil in their factory. So if you have a Marauders action figure, that's pretty much the standard that you're going to get from the Brazilian waves, which was Estrella. So, you know, it's not bad. It's not as bad as Fun School. Fun School's the worst. But these guys, they not only do you see them sometimes missing thumbs, but I've got a Sarge that's got all of his fingers removed, but he still has the thumb, which I've never seen before. I've never seen a G.I. Joe with no fingers and a thumb happening. So I can give an epic thumbs up, but that's about it. Yeah. But I think the reason why he's underrated is because he's definitely not the best as far as the paint scheme is concerned. The quality of plastic notwithstanding, it's not the best version of Sergeant Slaughter, but I can appreciate the fact that it has some character, it's got some charm, and it's at least different. Like you can pick out a Slaughter's Marauders Sarge in your collection from a mile away, and so for that, I think that he's underrated.
I think
I can't decide if I like it or not. Do I like it?
Well, and I think it's hard to like these figures when the vehicles that came out with Slaughter's Marauders were so flippin' awesome. It makes the figures, you know, the flaws stand out more. But I saw the modern, folks were doing the customs of the modern Sergeant Slaughter, and it just looks so good. But yeah, you're reusing the mold from the Triple T tank. At least get the right plastic to make them look somewhat decent instead of, like you're saying, a mannequin.
Well, the wristbands aren't painted either, which is another, and they're sculpted on there so you can see that they're there, but they're not painted. And you can't just switch the arms out with one that is painted because the skin color is so different. You can put the head and arms and alternate any of them between the other three, but this one, no, impossible. Well, it's not impossible. It looked really weird.
Look like he has a farmer's tan reversed.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
All right. So let's rate them, guys. What do we think about Slaughter's Marauders? Underrated or?
I would say that he is underrated. I remember as a kid thinking it's nonsense. I'm like this. I just thinking it was lazy, right? But I also want to take a moment and say, with the broken fingers but thumbs still intact, I've got a ginger bearded Australian here who's got all his fingers broken off and all his thumbs. So it's like my Xazyl figure.
That guy's all thumbs.
he's all thumbs. But no, I think as I remember as a kid thinking like this is just, and this is a guy who loved toys thinking this was just lazy as a kid. But now as an adult collector, you're like, yeah, he really does kind of pop. And there, like I said, there is some charm about him. I think he's better by himself than with the rest of the Marauders. I think when he stands alone, I think with the rest, it all kind of looks a little bit cheesier when they're all in the same garb, but a little bit, it looks even lazier in other people. But I think on his own, he really does pop. So I'd say, yeah, he's underrated.
A little underrated. A little. They made Marauders the smallest of the sub teams, from what I can tell. And I just think for that reason, the Marauders were just a tiny bit underserved. Like, look at the size of the force of the Iron Grenadiers. And even if they didn't make that many characters for some of the sub teams, they had army builders, right? Like, you look at Python Patrol. Yeah, there's only, and I'm using air quotes here, 6 of them, but you could army build those like crazy. Whereas with Marauders, who are you going to army build? Like, Barbecue looked like a little bit of an army builder, but he was still a unique character, right? So, a little underrated, but not grossly.
Yeah, he's underrated, I think, compared to the Triple T Sarge for sure. But I'd have to disagree with Adam. I think Sarge looks great as part of the Marauders team. Yeah, the amount of times that I've watched Xazyl's channel and watching the Marauders figures, I've really begun to appreciate. And yeah, I think they look great. So underrated, but yeah, I love him and the Marauders team too.
I'm going to say that it's underrated because he didn't come with his tank. If he was the vehicle driver for the tank, I think it's a home run. I think you can get away with a little bit more. But when you have to buy the figure separate from the vehicle, which was different from what Joe did in the past, that it just kind of hurts the figure overall. So I will say underrated.
Well, this is the only version of Sarge that came carded. So if you wanted a carded Sarge, this is your only opportunity to do so. But I will applaud them for not adding any of the blue to the vehicles, though. Mm-hmm. So, love or hate the blue, I think the vehicles look much better without that added inclusion.
I think, though, when I was a younger kid, I didn't care about the card because it was the first thing that's going to get destroyed. I'd save the file card. The vehicle boxes are the ones that I saved, and I don't know why I saved those compared to the cards, unless I'm looking at that vehicle art and I was just like, this is awesome.
Yeah.
So, all right, so let's go to the next, which is Mr. Toy Connection himself, Ken, aka Rio. And I think he picked a great character.
Yeah. So before the stream started, I have to admit, I was thinking to myself, wait, who did I pick again? And just like the last stream, I'm sitting here again. Come on. So as I stutter through this, I'm either one, stalling while I collect my thoughts, or 2, remembering why I picked this character. But let's carry on. Okay. So
and are you also doing your taxes right now? Like what?
I don't know. Ralph, are you done my taxes? Quiet. I'm trying to sleep. Okay, apparently he's trying to sleep and I'm too loud. Okay, so with Major Blood, with regards to him being, overrated / underrated or rated correctly, in the cartoon, I sort of found he would get the odd line here or there. He would show up in his tank, but there wasn't a lot of depth to the character as far as the Sunbow cartoon is concerned. And he sort of just got forgotten by the time you get to the second season of the Sunbow cartoon with G.I. Joe there. But if you look at the comic story, like, spoiler alert, he gets to kill a very key character in issue number 19 of the Larry Hama run. I won't say which one, but you should all know. Well, it's not really it's not really a spoiler because it's been that long, but and one, yes, love his accent, and yes, it seemed like Happy Accident says there were a lot of people I knew who wanted a Major Blood and ended up getting like other versions later on throughout the 90s or whatever other version you could get in the 2000s. Now, also in the Devil's Due run, there's actually a really key scene in there where he's in the middle of the battlefield, and one of the characters who's only unique to that run, General Ray, cuts his hand off, and that's how he gets his robotic hand. And then there's a really cool scene where he and Recondo are fighting in a village, and nobody knows why they haven't heard from Recondo, and it's because they were fighting very evenly, and then Major Blood gets the upper hand simply by punching Recondo with his mechanical hand. That's what knocks Recondo off the edge, and that's how Major Blood wins that fight, and then Rekondo's kind of AWOL for a while until the World War III storyline. So I just felt that there was a lot of potential with this character that was not realized in the Sunbow animated cartoon, because they did right by him in the comics, but not enough. And he had that cool look where you knew he was important in the Sunbow cartoon, but they didn't do enough for him, is what I think. That's why I feel he's a little bit underrated. That, and apparently people couldn't find him as a kid. So there you go. That's my pitch / off the cuff thoughts.
I'm the same way. I loved Major Blood. The Sunbow cartoon was cool, but once I discovered the comics, it helped develop the characters even more. And with the cartoon, they could never truly make the villains the vicious villains you need them to be. But in the comics, it made Major Blood seem more evil and would do anything that he needed to. You know? So it was awesome.
They had to go really kid friendly, and there just wasn't a place for a character that was this vicious in animated form in the 80s. So yeah.
Plus,
go ahead.
Major Blood, to me, it was like they took every 80s villain trope out of the basket. They're like, we want him to have a eye patch, check. Handlebar mustache, check. Accent, check. Give him like a German-esque helmet, check. Can his name be Blood? Absolutely, no problem. Check that out. Robot arm, perfect. So he was kind of that. He was all of the. He was clearly, you look at him, like, there's no way this is a good guy. It doesn't matter if you knew his backstory or not. He was evil. But as far as a kid, I got him as a birthday present, and I hated him because his stupid arm was stuck straight. He didn't. The thing about G.I. Joe that was great was all the articulation, right? And so this guy was missing a few points of articulation and drove me crazy. And so I rarely, like, he would always be the first to be captured, and he was always like being interrogated, but he didn't have a whole lot of action because he had this janky arm, which I get that it's a robot arm, but in the comics and in the TV show, he could still use it. And I felt like this was a bad way to represent that. So as an adult collector and as a fan of the story and the comics, yes, Major Blood's a great character. This figure was a miss for me.
I think I'll jump in here just to give it some Aussie representation, being that Major Blood is a fellow Australian. It's a head scratcher why they don't have the articulation in the arm, because just because it's a robot arm doesn't mean that it shouldn't have some articulation. There's plenty of other action figures with robot arms like the BATs or BATs that have serviceable articulation, right? So it seems to me that I don't know what the design idea was around this, whether or not they just had some sort of spare arm that they weren't using for anything. They're like, let's just give it to this guy. I think Major Blood has such a distinctive look, such a great character behind him, that he could have easily have been the big bad for Cobra, and we'd all be loving that still, right? If there was no Destro, no Cobra Commander, definitely no Serpentor, and Major Blood was the main guy, none of us would be complaining about it, at least, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I think that he has that, like Adam was saying, he does have that evilness to him, that villainous look. And I think that he would have easily been able to be the main bad guy for Cobra. But as it is, he's a mercenary?
Yes.
Gun for hire. I think even then that still makes him a pretty awesome character. Very great as far as, the desirability, cool backstory, cool look, great looking robot arm with or without the articulation. For me as a kid, articulation wasn't a big deal. I still love Star Wars. That was 5 POA. So not having an elbow at the time probably wouldn't have bothered me. I never owned this character. There was actually someone in the comment mentioned the Battle Sounds Major Blood. I have a feeling that was the version of Major Blood I had. One of the good things about G.I. Joe was that they came back and they revisited a lot of these characters. And so if you didn't get them the first time, you're able to pick them up in some form, right? So I think for me, this character I don't think he's underrated. I think he's very popular. I think he's highly rated. And the fact that he could easily stand in as the big bad for Cobra, I think that puts him as top tier level.
And I think, too, he fell victim to the Snake Eyes from 82, where they used, the sculpt for the helmet, the mustache, the robot arm, the dog tags, all of that stuff. And it was just costed out. And they thought, we can just get away with giving him a robot arm and saying that's why it can't move.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, fair enough.
But I will have to say the classified version of Major Blood, they knocked it out of the park with that. Absolutely gorgeous.
Plus his weapons too. Cool looking weapon.
Yeah, I
the
don't know.
backpack with rockets and everything.
Would you guys call this guy an underrated figure though? So this guy came out before we got Joe's in New Zealand. So I didn't have him as a kid, but as an adult collector, this was one of the first figures I was definitely drawn to getting. But basically with his look, and I think he's a standout figure personally.
Yeah, I agree.
I think he got lost in the shuffle during playtimes as kids with us because you had Destro, you had Cobra Commander, you had all the other Cobra leaders that he just kind of played that second tier when in all actuality he should have been moved up because I think he would, like Xazyl said, he could be the lead bad guy.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah. All right, let's look. I believe, yes, it is. Adam's choice is next.
Look at this.
And I think this is a great figure to go.
So this, I'm going to assume, is a place of trust where we can just be transparent with each other. And I'm going to reveal some truths about myself. So in this era of G.I. Joe, it was also the era of the Sunday night ABC and NBC movie where you could watch any movie that was out because they would edit it for television.
Yeah.
And so my dad would every Sunday night record the movie when I went to bed. So I'd come home on Monday and watch the Sunday night movie. So I just watched everything. And one fateful day I came home and watched a movie called Romancing the Stone.
Oh, yes.
And I watched it and watched it and watched it. Like, to me, it was as cool as Indiana Jones. It was that same kind of adventure. I loved it. And when I saw Muskrat in the store, I was like, this is as close to a Romancing the Stone figure as I'm going to get. So it was G.I. Joe, so it had that cool factor already, but he had like the machete and the shotgun, just like the main character from Romancing the Stone. He was in his like swamp gear. I was like this, and like I say, he's a streamline. He's like, it almost could be a real world character. It's not lots of robot stuff going on. He looked like someone I knew I could see, and it was like it doubles as a G.I. Joe figure and a Romancing the Stone figure. And so he's in my top 5 G.I. Joes of all time.
Nice.
And whenever I tell people that, they're always like, Muskrat? You don't hear a lot of Muskrat fans going on. He is, to me, he's an overlooked figure. I don't think he's on anybody's hit list to go when they say what figures you're going to get. He was one of the first ones I wanted to get. I love this figure. Reminds me of like my peak G.I. Joe fandom. Reminds me of Romancing the Stone. And I think his sculpt is fantastic. I think his access, he comes with a little surfboard. I think everything about him was spot on. They'd be hard pressed to do a better job putting a G.I. Joe figure out than Muskrat.
Adam, that is the best reason I've ever heard for someone to have a connection to an action figure. I love that. I love everything about that.
Yes.
Well, and I think if you think about growing up, as a kid of the 80s, I would watch Firefox or I'd watch Mega Force, and I would go and I would take out my G.I. Joes and I would play those movies. Romancing the Stone. Michael Douglas was hilarious in that movie, and it was an action adventure. People.
Yep.
And to us, it was just like going and play in the backyard. If Muskrat came out in '86, he comes out 2 years earlier. I think he is one of those top tier Joes. I think it's just because of where they fall that things had changed. But I remember picking this figure up at Kmart, and I was just like, he is flipping awesome. And I got the Swamp Masher, and they went hand in hand. It was perfect.
Oh yes,
Yeah.
that's a good combination. Ryan, your microphone's starting to get a bit crackly, my
A bit
friend.
static, a bit staticky. Yeah.
Yeah, okay, let me do this.
Yeah.
But,
He came out in-
I
He
need
came
a,
out in '88, didn't he? Must have.
88.
Yeah, and that was a huge line. Like so many figures in 1988.
Yeah.
So yeah, I kind of missed out on him because he got lost in the mess of '88 figures.
probably would if they could pick out a little bit more of the detail on him, that would have really helped as well. But I've wanted an excuse to pick up a muskrat, and now I have one thanks to Adam. So yeah, my buddy Jaden absolutely hates muskrat for some reason, but yeah, I think now he's got a whole new level thanks to you, Adam. I appreciate that.
You could even put his head on a Chuckles body, and it's even more Michael Douglas.
True.
All
There
right.
you go.
And I see Chad's making fun of me. Chad, this is like my first live show, so comments are still kind of new to me. So I'll get there though. And yeah, I know you get classified, but 6 inch for life, buddy.
That's what she said.
We're going to go on to Phil, which I think is another home run figure.
Okay, yeah. So wetsuit. So this was my first figure, and I've got wetsuit to thank for getting me into G.I. Joe. So yeah, I would just love the underwater figures as a kid. I loved going to the beach and playing in water and stuff like that. And for me, Torpedo was such an underwhelming figure from '83 or '84. Very, very plain looking. And so I wasn't a big fan of Torpedo, but yeah, wetsuit, again, his colors just really pop. His bright yellow accessories as well. And yeah, I just love wetsuit because yeah, he's the guy that got me into G.I. Joe, basically. And the Wet Willie. And I don't.
Sorry, couldn't help it.
He's another figure that I don't think he had much of a representation in the movie. So he had quite a minor appearance. But did he even show up in the movie? Maybe very.
He had a
very,
scene that
very
was cut
briefly.
from the script, but I don't think he shows up. If he shows up at all, it's as a background character, but I don't think so.
Yeah. And I remember him on the cover of one of the comics on the devilfish with Beachhead. So Beachhead is another favorite of mine. So
Oh yes.
yeah, that tandem of Beachhead and wetsuit has always been a favorite. But yeah, wetsuit wins out for me. For sure. So yeah, my first figure, my first G.I. Joe love. And yeah, I don't come across many people who say wetsuit is their favorite figure, so that's why I put him as an underrated. Maybe Scuba Pete. I'd imagine maybe.
Yeah.
a wetsuit fan.
So
Well, the
wetsuit.
collectors. Go ahead.
All right.
Go ahead. No,
All right,
go ahead.
so I think wetsuit for me, I think he's top tier as far as the scuba Joes are concerned. But yeah, you don't hear a lot of people saying that except for Scuba Pete, would say that the scuba Joes are the top of the list of their action figures, right? But I will say I have a fondness for wetsuit because of the friendly rivalry between him and Leatherneck, and Leatherneck for me was one of my favorites. So Phil, you and I would have had an interesting playtime as kids. You as wetsuit and me as Leatherneck. Yeah, a friendly rivalry.
Yeah.
But yeah, I understand fully. Like I think he's a popular scuba figure. I just don't think that he is top I don't think he's highly rated as an overall GI Joe. So I agree with you on that one, Phil.
I think
I
the
will
coat.
say, sorry, go ahead.
Sorry, go ahead, Ryan.
I was going to say, I will say, you don't hear a lot of people saying like, "Oh, I love wetsuit," but the people that do, he's usually their first or second pick.
Right.
People that love wetsuit like absolutely love him. So he has like a strong, small fan base for sure.
The lack of removable helmet also probably makes it harder to relate to the character. But if you ever seen Torpedo's action figure, Torpedo looks like a female. I am 100% convinced that Torpedo is supposed to be a female character that they just changed at the last minute. Look it up. Look at a picture of Torpedo and tell me I'm wrong. You will never look at Torpedo the same way again. Ken's gone to go do it.
It's the eyelashes, right? The sort of feminine eyelashes.
Yeah, and the breasts.
The boobs, yeah.
Both of those things, yeah.
He's the most 2022 G.I. Joe ever.
Yeah. Torpedo.
When I was growing up, there was a show called Mutual of Omaha, and they would have Jacques Cousteau on, and you would see the undersea adventures, and seeing all the Joe divers coming out with, Torpedo as Xazyl likes to call him now. Torpedo was one of my favorites, but even Deep Six, and then when Wetsuit came out, I had to have all the divers. We had a above ground pool in the backyard, and I remember just taking my Joes out there and playing with them with the Cobra Eels and everything else. James Bond, one of the movies they had that big underwater fight scene, and it just Torpedo reminded me of that too. But I think the only time I'm going to compliment the G.I. Joe Collector Club, and if anybody's dealt with them in the past, they understand why. But the wetsuit figure that they came out with for the convention exclusive is probably one of the best modern style figures that they've ever made. True Navy SEAL, had the scuba pack on the back, the flippers, and the woodland camo. So great figure there.
Is that the Brazilian? Sorry, is that Ryan? Is that the Brazilian version next to the 86 version on the screen there?
The one with the
special missions.
Oh yes, that is the Brazilian next to the 86.
Yeah, he looks hot as well.
Arguably better than the original, the Mission Brazil version.
Mm-hmm. I wish they would have just changed the yellow on the scuba packs to black, and I think that Mission Brazil would have been just absolutely perfect.
Did they change the color of the other accessories, like for Leatherneck?
No, Leathernecks are exactly the same.
So they must have kept them all across the board.
Yeah, mainframes are the same.
Okay. But not a bad figure as far as the original sculpts are concerned. They came out with later O-ring wetsuits? Or is this the only two that they came up with?
There was a 92, I believe, in the black and yellow outfit. That was the only wetsuit I had as a kid. 91 or 92, I can't remember. There were at least two more versions.
Who came with the dolphin? Was that Deep Six?
That was a later version of Deep Six, I think.
Ah, okay.
Yeah, I purposely will not remember those. And they came with dolphins or orcas or, pool noodles. I just couldn't do it. Just couldn't help. No.
One final note that I'll make on Wetsuit is he actually has a connection with Sgt Slaughter as well, because in Ninja Holiday, Sgt Slaughter for the majority of that episode is actually called Wetsuit because he takes on his identity to perform in the battle royale.
Mm.
I don't know how you can.
He has a stick fight with Sarge, doesn't he? Like a kendo.
He does. Yeah.
I
At the
saw
end.
a clip of that. Yeah.
Unbelievable.
Yeah.
All right. Now we come to the greatest of all time figures, in my opinion, of course. Most underrated of all time. Nobody likes this guy but me. Nobody.
That's the Dead Man.
Yeah.
Right. It's Zartan. The only reason why I say that he's underrated, which I don't believe, let's just be honest, is just how he was always portrayed in the Sunbow cartoon as kind of being the foil to Destro, or, you know, just kind of out for himself. But he would always screw up some way, or the Dreadnoks would screw up some way, and it would always ruin the plans. In the comics, he was always treated different, but it wasn't until like the Devil's Due when they did that big background story on Zartan. I think it was like 4 issues that had the giant cover that you could match up. That's where I gained more appreciation for the darker side of Zartan. I would really love if they did more of that, even with the Devil's Due run, with how he expanded the Dreadnoks and different things like that. I would just love to see them take Zartan's darker side, bring it out more, and not be scared to say, you know, schizophrenic like they had on the original file that they had.
He has a whole identity crisis, and that's kind of his main story arc in the Devil's Due run. So that's I see what you're saying, because they go deeper with his storyline in the comics.
Yeah.
Plus the color change gimmick, when that came out in 86, and having the Swamp Skier that did the same thing, I was hooked. When I got that figure, I was absolutely hooked. Then they come out with the Dreadnoks, and then Zorana, Xandar, Thrasher, and Monkey Wrench. It was just like, this is my crew. These are the people that I relate to more than I do the Joes or the Cobra.
So I will say, to this day, there has not been a better disguise gimmick for any action figures, with the faces you put onto his face. It was seamless and perfect. It didn't look stupid. It didn't look oversized. It wasn't like the head looked out of place. They were seamless, and the backpack with the fake face in it, like, this figure had everything going for it. I didn't like in the Sunbow TV show that, you know, Cobra was kind of their own worst enemy. Just let them fail their own plans, and G.I. Joe can go to the beach and just take a day off. But as far as a cool figure and like a great villain, Zartan, for me, a figure was 10 out of 10, character was 10 out of 10. Love him.
So who is he disguised as? Joe Colton?
And which?
Well, in the bearded face.
I don't think they ever said who that was.
Yeah, I don't know who that was, but it was awesome.
It was
But
just
it was
to show
cool
he
that-
could be somebody. That's all.
Yeah.
And you could put the face in the backpack, and then, you know, you could clip on the gun. Different things like that just made that figure awesome. Plus, coming with the swaps here in the box was cool too.
I always thought it would be cool in the weapons pack and accessory packs if there's more faces.
Yeah. Well, the 25th anniversary had a Duke, a Storm Shadow, the bearded face. I think that's it, maybe. But yeah, it's a great gimmick. Mission Impossible-esque, you know, with the face reveals, peeling back the bearded face. I display mine always with the bearded face on it. I just think it looks, I don't know, I like the look of it. Like Ryan said, it doesn't look oversized. It doesn't look weird like some can do. When you have a face mask, it can make the face look oversized. But I think it's a top tier character. Cold Slither, best band possibly in the world. You know, I've yet to see them live, but I hope they come to Australia, being that they're a Australian biker gang, where we've already established that a lot of them aren't even Australian. I think we picked maybe 2 or 3 that were legitimately Australian. Yeah. But changing color, what a gimmick, right? Yep. We loved that in the 80s. Changing color gimmick, the face mask that can change, the swamp skier, there's nothing bad about this figure. Oh, except for maybe you can't change your O-ring easily. Other than that,
no. That's doing just crazy surgery. I had to change the O-ring on my 86 version, and it was like 2 days of just careful cutting and heating up and then getting it popped off. And I'm like, I'm not gluing it back together. I don't care.
Yeah.
Why is it so hard to change the O-ring?
Because you can't unscrew it from the back and separate the two halves. It's all glued together. Same with Piranha. Same with
Xandar.
Xandar. Yeah.
Yeah, I've heard the best way is you got to cut it from underneath, like where it doesn't show, like underneath the torso. That's where you start your cut. So if you got to do some surgery to them and you put them back on, you put you'll cover where you would have done the surgery, and then it's best just not to glue it back together, because at some point in 10 years or whatever, the O-ring is going to go again. Right.
So here's the Go Figure fix for that. Is I don't use an O-ring. I use a black craft elastic, and I fish it through with like a wire, pull it, and then make an O-ring out of the elastic, and then hook it onto the pants, and it works fine.
Brilliant. Yeah, genius. Good stuff.
So
thanks for the tip.
That's the Go Figure hack of the day.
No, it works. I'd rather have done that than, I ended up buying a couple clunker Zartans just in case to practice on before I attempted surgery.
Wow.
So
that's attention to detail.
Yeah.
Cool.
So the only other reason I think he's underrated is because with as many repaints as the Joe and Hasbro team did, they didn't come out with the new Zartan until Ninja Force. And I think
would say
with
Ninja Force is arguably more underrated. He's had an aneurysm.
He just disappears off the stream. Like, just hard no.
Yeah.
Oh no.
Hold on. Breathe. It's like Ninja Force. Just breathe now. The O-ring Ninja Force, the colors are just hideous. Now, the club did a Zartan Ninja Force before they closed, and it was a really good figure that came with the bike. So I will agree with you on that point. The orange and all the gimmicks that the Ninja Force characters had just always drove me nuts, where you couldn't do what you wanted to do with the figures.
I don't disagree with you. I just think that if out of the two of them, the Ninja Force one would be a bigger argument for being underrated. I can only, and you'll got to agree, Ryan, that this guy is top tier, highly sought after. And I think you just wanted literally an excuse to talk about your favorite Dread Knight, which is fine with me, man. Because I found a way to do it for mine too.
When you put Slaughter's Marauders in, I'm like, oh, this means I can talk about Zartan. Then I don't have to come up with this will work for me. Okay. But I will be honest. I think if I'm looking at underrated G.I. Joe or Cobra characters, I would have to say that for the Joe figure, to me, who is underrated is Wild Bill. And I know people but he came with the Dragonfly. When that Dragonfly came out and you saw that character, and if you would have saw, Apocalypse Now or any of those movies like that, I just always thought that figure and what they could have really done with Wild Bill would really have set him apart compared to some of the other folks.
I thought it was a literal sin that the Tigerfly came with Rakondo and not Wild Bill.
Right. Well, they show a prototype of Wild Bill in that, but they ended up bringing out Rakondo instead. So they had plans to, I suppose. But as a fan of old school westerns, I love Wild Bill. He's probably my second favorite character. If I have to pick a second, it'd be Wild Bill. And the Battle Core one is also very good with the removable hat.
Oh yes, the one in the blue. Yes, blue and white. Wow.
All right.
Any excuse to talk about Zartan is a good reason. Let's put that.
It is for me, absolutely. So, well, I think
definitely not underrated. Like he's actually the prize. I've got him on card. He's a carded figure in the Japanese line. So,
that is. Can you bring that up again, Phil?
Sorry. So
hold on, I'm going to try to do this. So I want him to be. There we go.
Look at that. My prized possession out of my Joes in Japan. So,
does this mask float around behind him like a conscience?
There we go.
Angel devil thing going on.
Yeah. So if anybody out there is watching, I need Zartan's legs and hips. I bought a lot of Joe's, and the Zartan I got right now has Hannibal's legs from the A-Team figure on him. So he's got blue pants. It looks like he's one of Slaughter's Marauders.
Adam, I might have those for you. Do you need
awesome.
legs and crotch, right?
Yeah. I have his mask and his backpack and everything else. I just need his legs and crotch. They got crushed.
I'll dig through my stuff and I'll let you know. So because I had a couple of those fingers that I practiced on. So
nice.
Perfect.
Well, I love you guys. It's so good. Right.
I hate to break this to you, but it wasn't really grape soda and donuts. It was something else, but it's okay.
I had to keep it kid friendly, right?
You had to keep it kid friendly.
Uh-huh.
So, well, perfect. Well, gentlemen, thank you all for joining. I'm going to give you guys a few minutes. We'll just call it an environmental break because I'm sure the wetsuits are getting full. Before we go to our next stream. But before we do that, I'm going to try to do this and think if I'm doing this correctly.
Yep. Gaz has put it in the
there it is.
Yeah.
Oh, did he already?
Yeah.
Don't forget to subscribe while you're here. Leave a like.
You know how much that kills me to say that?
Well, that's why I'm saying it.
I appreciate everyone who subscribes. I won't be a jerk. I joke because I say don't subscribe and don't like because it's just funnier that way. But if you do, I invite my friends on to talk about toys, movies, videos, just anything silly nerd stuff. So the more people, the merrier. So
the thing I love about your channel, my friend, is that there's joy in everything you're doing. And there's a lack of that in the toy community sometimes. So I appreciate that everything you're doing is with a smile. So thank you for that.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Life is hard enough. Our toys are our escape. And as kids, we understood that. We played out these great scenarios, great battles in our heads, and we were creative and we were happy. When you're making stuff, creating stuff, you're just always in a better place. So,
well, it doesn't hurt that you also have a handsome smile.
There we go.
Well, thank you.
There we go.
So, thank you, everyone, for joining an Island of Misfit Toy Collectors. Everyone in the chat, seriously, thank you very much. To my good buddy Gaz and everybody else who knows, that's for you. Thank you again for joining. You guys all have a great rest of the day, and we'll see you on A Toy Connection.
All right.